Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bonsai Apprentice. I'm Staten Zahner. Thanks for being here. I took a couple weeks off there. Just too hot really in the States to do anything where I'm at. Especially here in Missouri. We were still up into the 90s up until literally a couple days ago. So I was just letting the trees get their last little burst of growth in. Did some research coming up for this winter where I can really give you guys videos all through the winter. Sometimes you just got to go through a little bit of a lull so that you can go forward. So that's kind of what I had to do here. So hopefully though that all works really well and we just are back on track now. Go ahead, hit that like, share, subscribe button, and follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok. I'm posting there. It's a great time. So hopefully you can get some enjoyment out of that too. Today though, we're going to be talking about my wind swept juniper. This is Juniper chinensis. You're going to be looking at the front there when I back it up for you guys here in a minute. As you can see, it's really overgrown. We have some really bushy and really thick areas. Other areas, not so much. We got to do a couple things on this tree to get it ready for the winter. And we're going to talk a little bit about fall physiology as we go through and do those things. So first things first, I'm going to grab the camera, bring you in. We're going to clean off the bark on this juniper so that we can get it ready for winter, because right now is the great time for borers and bugs. This is when you're going to see that larva. So we got to clean this bark off and get it ready for winter so that none of those borers, none of those bugs can be living in this bark. So I'm going to grab you in, flip you around. We'll get the close-up, show you how I'm doing that. And then from there, we'll talk a little bit about the shooters. And as I'm cleaning up the tree, we'll talk about fall physiology. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to show you guys is this wire brush that we have right here. It's just steel. It's a little, it's hard. But this flaky bark is where all these borers can live. So what we need to do is take our brush, we need to go through and just hit that bark. Okay? If you have really thick, you might need to use like an X-Acto knife or something like that. But just get that bark off. And we're just going to do this to the whole tree and try and get as much of this bark off as possible. Okay, so as you can see, I'm going through. This won't hurt the tree at all. It'll leave it with a nice really red color. Here in a couple days it'll look really really nice. Okay, and so what we just want to do though is just go through, and we want to get, I would say if I had the base showing more, I would get lower, but I don't, so I'm not going to. But you just want to hit everything you can. We want to hit all the branches. We want to hit all the big branches. Obviously, we don't need to hit the dead wood. That's not necessary. There's no bark there. But as we come in, and look, we want to hit here. Make sure we get everything. Okay, get underneath. We want to make sure we get that, nooks, crannies, and just keep going. This is probably a 20-30 minute process to hit the whole tree. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back and start talking about the shooting. Alright, so I've done cleaning up all the bark and making it nice and red. Ooh, focus. And getting all the really flaky stuff off. But as I was doing that, I noticed I'm cutting in wire biting in a lot of different areas. And so what I need to do is go and remove that wire. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. Alright, so as I remove this wire, you can see the huge bite marks that are coming into the tree. This is due to the thickening of the branch rapidly that happens this time of year. In the fall and in the spring, you get a lot of transportation of water. This is from both the tree preparing to take care of itself during the winter, but also in the spring, the expanding growth that happens all throughout the tree. Both these times a year, though, we're moving a ton of resources up and down the branch. That's why the branch is getting thicker. The wire isn't going to move, so the branch grows around the wire. Now, this bite is pretty severe. If this was a deciduous tree, we'd have a lot more problems, but because it's coniferous, this will be okay. I can even come, if I wanted to, and make this a shari piece coming up. I'm not going to. I think it'll heal out and be okay here in the coming months, but it's just something to think about moving forward. So as I come out, you can see the wire marks, you can see some of the unusual thickening in certain places, and that's okay. We'll hide that with this foliage, and it's not really a huge deal for a juniper like this. So we just need to go around the tree and make sure that that's not happening everywhere. There's a couple other places which I'll show you here in a second, but it kind of has the same effect. And this is all because of the transpiration of goods, the chloramine coming back into the tree, the sugars and starches moving back into the tree. So when we work on a tree, we have to understand what it's doing long term. So if I back it up and we move the camera, you can't really see that wire mark was there. If you look really close, you'll be able to tell. But overall, on a tree like this, the overall shape is more important than the actual little wire marks. Something like a deciduous tree, we'd have to take into account more things. But that just goes to show it's another thing to look at on a juniper this time of year. So the other big wire mark section that I think is going to happen is going to be right here. You can see it really biting in into the branch there. So I need to go and I need to remove this wire too. So we'll come in, cut the wire. Got to get, there it goes. You got to be careful with that being overgrown like that. And just kind of wiggle it out. Make sure we're getting that cut nice and tight. There we go. Ooh, tighten that groove. Which just shows how much it's grown, right? So you can see the mark there. You can feel it on the backside. So it is definitely something to keep an eye on this time of year. You can see that lower one there is also biting in on the tree. So we'll have to come around the other side and get that one as well. So just pay attention as your trees thicken that certain branches are going to be biting in this time of year. It might be a good idea just to de-wire before it starts to bite into all your branches or in all the different places that might be affected. So I'm going to remove most of this wire that's biting in. I might just remove a lot of the stuff that's not on the secondary branches and come back when I've got that done. Alright, so as we move into talking about the shooters, I realized that my mic wasn't on. So I've cut some off, but other ones I haven't yet, so I realized that. So when we're talking about shooters, what we mean, and let me grab one, are pieces that have elongated extremely long, this one's about an inch, with little to no growth on the actual piece. Okay, and the reason that we want to remove those is because they don't allow for ramification down the road. So when we get to a tree like this where our general direction is ramification, we want to remove those shooters because they're not going to ramify well for us. Okay, now in understanding that, on the flip side, if we need to have a piece get healthy or we need it to elongate, okay, we want to leave those shooters. So when I come in here, okay, I'm going to bring you in. I have this shooter right here sprouting up from the base has almost nothing on it. Okay, but I want to leave this shooter because I know in the next year or two I'm going to remove part of this apex and I'm going to need something to replace that, and that's what this shooter will be. Okay, so knowing why you're removing this, okay, these are coming out this next year will be a very elongated piece. Knowing that I'm going to be removing the top of this apex to build a more compact and smaller apex on my windswept, make it more dynamic, right? I need a smaller piece. That's what this will be. Okay, so knowing why we remove shoots, whereas if I'm pulling up, this pad right here, I need this very compact, very short. Okay, I don't want shooters on this piece. As we move forward, this piece is going to have to become more ramified. It's going to actually need to be pushed smaller in our total design of looking at the front. Okay, it's going to be too big and too puffy as is, so I need to ramify it more. Okay, I don't need it elongating, I need it ramifying. Okay, so understanding that in certain parts of your tree you might need different things should dictate why you took the shooters off. Okay? Just remember that those pieces are going to be elongating pieces next year. They're going to be big pieces next year. And we're trying to build that ramification piece. So we need to shrink it. Okay? We need to keep it tighter. Okay? That's our overall goal. The shooters, not bad. If you need the vigor in your tree, you need the health in your tree, leave them. Okay? Next spring, when this thing gets repotted, the shooters that come out then are probably going to be left alone until I know the tree's healthy, and then we can start to pull back on some of those and continue to ramify this tree. Okay? So I'm going to go finish cutting the rest of those now that my mic's back on, and we'll come back at the end and do an outro. All right, and that's all for this video. I just wanted to recap a couple of the things we talked about. So on your junipers, make sure you're cleaning your bark off. There's a debate going on about whether or not you should or you shouldn't, the aesthetics of it. But for me personally, I love my trees. I don't want borers in them. I've seen, beautiful trees die because of it, and I just prefer not to have that happen to my trees. And the best way to do that, just to clean off your bark every year. Make sure that there's no place to lay eggs. And if they get the larva, you see it, you pull it off, it dies. So I recommend that. I'm going to be doing it to my other Chinese juniper. May or may not make a video about it. May not be short. But it's a lot of the same stuff, right? The other thing we talked about is the movement of sugars, starches, and chloramine, chloroform from the foliage into the tree. All right, because the junipers are evergreens, they don't pull all of it. Obviously, they leave a lot of their goodies in the actual branch, and that's good. It makes them hardier for the winter, but we still want to protect them a little bit. I'll make a video about that later, not now because it's still fall and there's no need. But just remember, the more work you do on a tree this time of year, the more susceptible to the weather it's going to be. Okay, so we moved about 50 probably shooters on this tree, and as they continue to grow and get out there, we'll probably remove another 50 towards the end of the year. It's not going to make a big difference on this tree, but last year when I styled this tree, it was going to make a big difference on this tree. So just keep that in mind. The more you work on a tree this time of year, the more you have to protect it in the winter, and we'll talk about that later. But we talked about the transportation of goods, sugars, starches in the tree to the roots, and how they're being stored, the thickening of those branches. So watch your wire marks. My goodness. And at the end of this, we talked about the shooters, knowing what you want to elongate and what you want to make tight, and having a general plan for your tree come the fall. So that's all for this tree. It really isn't a huge deal, but it's something that I feel you need to understand why you're doing something on your trees. It's very important for me to try and educate on the reasons you would do something this time of year versus just blindly going for it, right? Like, there's a reason we do things at certain times of the year. This is one of them. Without further ado, though, have a great day. Enjoy your trees. The colors, it's fall, baby. It's fall. Pumpkin weather. So I hope you enjoy it. Please leave a like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on TikTok. I'm posting there. It's great stuff. I'm having a blast. So if you want to do that, that'd be amazing. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comment section below. I'll get to them. And without further ado, sayonara.